Well, hello to all of you, and thanks a million for coming back to share some time with me on our new series, Finding Peace with Carol Howe, and, of course, with today's wonderful interview guest. For those in the U.S., I hope your Thanksgiving weekend was a happy one, and no matter where you live, remembering to be grateful for all of our blessings, large and small, is not merely a polite or a nice thing to do, but a crucially important component of our healing and peace of mind. So think of lots of things to be grateful for. We're grateful you're here. And speaking of finding our peace, that becomes a near impossibility when you don't know how or why your lives are unfolding the way they are. Now, most of us have learned that our thoughts and beliefs are our own private business and unknown to others, that we can think whatever we want to think, let that train of thought aimlessly wander wherever, and that our visible outer life is unrelated. No one will know. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. They are 100% a seamless whole. Got that? A seamless whole. Now, we convey a small percentage of what we're thinking and believing with our words, another fairly small percentage with our facial expression, body language, and tone of voice, but most of how we think, how we regard ourselves and others is always being broadcast in our energy fields. It's just sitting there for all who are even slightly aware to pick up. And today's guest is finding out all about this none too soon. Mimi writes of a big long list of ongoing challenges on her plate related to finances and work and relationship and the kids and more. But the recent bizarre catalyst driving her to seek help and answers was a stray bullet that came flying through her bedroom window one night, grazing her arm enough to raise a welt, barely missing her chest by millimeters, going through another wall and finally landing in the next room. Now, if that's not a big wake-up call to find out what in the world is going on in your life, I don't know what is. So I hope you will pay close attention, because I'm sure that what Mimi finds out about how she is unknowingly sabotaging herself can transfer to you and other things that might be occurring in your life, perhaps not so dramatic, but things that need to be healed. She's recognizing big shifts are trying to happen, but she's not clear what all they are or why, and she's looking for direction. So here we go to help clear things up for her and for you. Enjoy. Okay, Mimi, thanks a million for writing in and let us know what's going on with you, because it sounds like a whole lot. And as you mentioned in your email, there is just enormous changes in your life and shifting, and that I understand you need some direction about that. And boy, I sure would too. So tell me what you consider of the various things going on, kind of what's at the top of your list that seems most unsettling or most peculiar, or you can't figure out why it's going on. In other words, of the assorted things that you wrote about, what is most pressing for you?
Well, I got divorced about 6 years ago, and I acquired a lot of debt in that divorce. And I'm on my own now, and I've been on my own for the past 6 years since then. It took me a long time. A lot of good family members suggested many different things, but it took me a long time to kind of get the courage up to finally decide I needed to do something probably scary like bankruptcy or something to try to clear that out. I've had a lot of things in those 6 years that I've kind of had to, besides just my financial things, that I've had to kind of look at. It surrounds, I guess, the fact of taking care of myself. What does it mean to take care of Mimi? How am I going to do that? I've always kind of been taken care of. I've been in relationships where my husbands, they were the ones financially responsible for me, or our lives together. Before that, my parents, were the ones responsible for me. Now I'm on my own. It falls onto me to kind of take care of it, and it's been overwhelming. Even when I have people involved in my life that can give me suggestions and direction, the courage to step out sometimes is really huge.
Okay, that is a very important comment that you just made, the courage to step out. So what does the courage to step out mean? In other words, step out in what way, or step out in asking, or in other words,
no, well, I mean,
more about that.
For me, it really means stepping out on my own, like feeling like I can support myself. Can I actually do that? Like, in reality, financially, I make a very small wage as a teacher. I teach kindergarten, and I don't make a living wage. I actually took a second job this year to try to fill in the gaps of the bills that I could not pay and keep up with. And even feeling like that's enough, like, can I still live and keep the things that I want in my life and give myself and my children, when they're with me, give the things that we need and desire. And I think there's an internal part of me that feels like, even though I'm educated, I'm smart, I have a lot of things really, and I mean, I have good family and friends who believe very strongly in me, maybe more than I do myself, actually, and tell me all the time.
There you go.
Yeah.
You just hit the nail on the head, because what has been coming into my mind while you're talking is a lack of self-confidence simply in you. In other words, because I suspect that you're a smart woman, that you're an educated woman, that you're a talented woman. So often it's not such like, do I feel like I know what to do, although that's part of it, but also, is it there for me? It is my own internal support. Like you've mentioned that there's support from others around you, but somewhere we have to have our own internal support. That idea that somehow I am innately, and this is important to hear, that I am innately, by the universe, so to speak, supported and loved and deserving and worthy of having a supported and happy life. And for most people on the planet, this is hardly a unique situation. Someplace in there, in our earliest days and in our earliest programming, we begin to learn, I can't, I'm not deserving, and so on. And that early conditioning really has a grip until we specifically look at it, change our minds about it, and so on. And what happens when you have big things on your plate like you do right now? It's as if you're being forced, not at all with a sense of punishment, but being forced to look at, what do I actually believe about myself? Not what I give lip service to, but what I really believe. Now, that's kind of a big mouthful, so what comes up for you when you hear all that?
Well, yes, and in my life, I've had to look at, many different times in my younger years, my middle years, and now, I'm in my, I'm 50, and so there definitely have been times in my life where I've had to look at, try to empower myself that I am able to do these things for myself. I am capable and full of all the right things to do what I need to do or give myself. But here I'm going to throw another wrench in it.
Okay.
Because it's even another layer. Because the truth is, if I ask myself truthfully, do I want to do it for myself? The answer is no.
I was going to say, the answer is somehow, and this is also so common. You see, we think that the ways we think and so on are kind of ours alone, rather than realizing everybody on the planet is more or less dealing with the same thing. And that is, early on, we learn a kind of sense of entitlement. Like, somehow, I didn't get my way about something, let's just say a long time ago or when you were growing up. And so then we make it erroneously the responsibility of someone else or something else or some other institution or something to supply for me what I didn't get earlier. And as strange as that sounds, I mean, I can certainly remember feeling that way in my younger days. Does that have a familiar ring to it?
Right. And there's guilt a little bit in that, feeling like, it should, these things, I should be giving it to myself. I shouldn't have a problem with it. I should be okay with the fact that it's hard work and that I struggle and that these things are the way they are. And on the other hand, I'm not committed to feeling guilty like that in my life or putting that guilt on myself. I feel like, maybe it's okay that I don't feel like I have to be alone in this walk, that it's okay to be in a partnership or to have the help of another person or to, not that somebody has to do it all for me or take care of everything and just, fix it.
Yeah.
But although there is a little bit of that, I do, I feel like, it's hard on your own to do it. And I think there is that part then where I say, I'm not good at it enough to do it on my own. I can't give it to myself. So I need someone else to help me.
Absolutely. And so it's like it's hard to know which of those comments to respond to first. The first one is, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you and everyone else deserve to feel helped and to feel supported and to feel like people are there for us. Absolutely. In other words, part of our problem is thinking we're alone when we're not as alone as we think we are. But you also indicated, well, I don't know whether I'm good enough for this or I'm good enough at what I do or whatever. But the really big word that you mentioned that's in great big capital letters, kind of like neon red or something like that, is sometimes I feel guilty. The actual fact is every single one of us carry a lot more guilt, which is hugely painful, than we're even aware of. See, a lot of people will say, that's really crazy. I don't feel guilty at all. And they are legitimately saying what they think is so, but they have no idea of those layers of guilt. I was appalled and stunned and amazed when I really reached that very bottom of the bucket level of deep guilt myself. If someone had said earlier, you feel guilty about a lot of things, I would have said, boy, I don't, and that's sort of insulting to say that. That sounded an accusation of some kind. But once I came face to face with it, and both the anguish and the terror that surrounds it, and we don't even have to go into right now where that comes from. Let's just say it's common to every human being who's ever born. So that what often happens is life becomes guilt or terror or pain management. And we don't even realize that. But my job, not only for myself, but for everyone else, is to say that primal guilt then gets attached to all kinds of things in our early years. And we'll find ourselves saying, I feel guilty because I did this to my mother. I feel guilty because I betrayed a husband. I feel guilty because I didn't do the right thing in my child rearing. Or I feel guilty because I don't know how to spend my money.
It's endless.
It's endless, yes. And when you read my real problem, and this is so important to hear, I so reach out to you about this, is that the real issue is we're not guilty about anything. in time and space, so to speak, we've certainly made lots of errors. We've been egocentric. We've made life be about us. We've been, even sometimes narcissistic, taking that to, you might say, egocentricity to a higher level. And there's no doubt that we've done that. But that does not mean that we're guilty. It means that we've been very mistaken. And you might say, oh, well, those are the same thing. Well, absolutely, they are not the same thing, because guilt implies that you have somehow permanently altered your beautiful, good, and eternal and deserving nature. In other words, making mistakes is one thing. Like, we've all made so many gazillions of those, we can't count them. But mistakes, you don't punish yourself for. You go, oh, well, that's not right. I mean, I live down here in Florida, and if I want to drive down to Miami and I go over to the coast, I better be making a right-hand turn to go south. And if I don't, if I turn left and go north to Jacksonville, that's not a crime, but it just won't get me to Miami. And I'm going to have to, some point, in some way, realize, oh, I've headed the wrong direction. So what I would, almost makes me want to cry, like what I would want for you more than anything is to realize, well, you've made some mistakes, probably lots of mistakes, and you've not recognized that those were fixable mistakes, and that somewhere in there you've just kind of ruined whoever it is you are. And again, you might say, no, I haven't ruined myself. I don't think that at all. We are, it's so painful. We stick it into our unconsciousness where it's alive and well and responsible for all these difficulties sitting on your plate. Now, what do you think about all that?
Well, yes, and my plate has seemed overwhelmingly full, especially in this last year. But I've done a good bit of work in my past, and I mean, I do look at some of this as these are lessons. I don't tend to look at myself as making, that I'm making mistakes. There are things that are teaching me along the way, or I hope. And sometimes maybe that's my biggest question. Like, am I actually getting the lessons, or am I, somehow backhandedly holding my hand up and saying, not now, I can't hear it, I can't take it, I can't deal with it, I can't absorb that lesson, and I'm repeating, the same things over and over, and so it just keeps kicking it back to me harder.
Well, now that you're really correct about that. When we don't,
I can be a very stubborn person, honestly, Carol.
Well, you're right in that when these things keep coming back, if we could only look at it this way, if they're not coming back out of some sort of a horrible desire to punish you, they're coming back because there are some basic, you might say, laws of the universe that are being violated. It would be like if you arrived in from Mars or someplace and you didn't know about the law of gravity and you decided, hey, that's a nice building, I think I'm going to fly off the roof. Well, you won't fly off the roof. You'll crash to the ground and you'll either kill yourself or you'll hurt yourself or you'll do something. But you wouldn't say that that person is being, like, deliberately and specifically punished. And if they don't get it, and they get, he or she or it gets back up on the roof and says, well, I guess I just didn't fly the right direction. I'll try to fly right. And off they fly again. They're going to come crashing because there is a law that's being, we'll say, violated, but not in a personal, willful way. It's lack of awareness. So if you could see, and if we can all see, that everything that happens that we think is unloving or fearful or awful or hurtful or whatever it might be, the lesson, there is a lesson, but we have to know what the lesson is. The lesson, just like if you fly off the roof, you're going to fall to the ground and hurt yourself. It's not personal. This is also not personal. What it says is when we hang on to guilt, when we actually have a bunch of beliefs in there about how we're not okay, and I'll tell you in a minute where they come from, you might say it's a request of the universe. We'll just keep it in simple language to say, send me some punishment because I'm guilty and therefore deserve it. And you think,
boy.
I'm not sending any such message at all. And you have to say, well, you have to infer that you are, since things that have a punishing quality are showing up. The thing that one has to remember is anytime you harbor guilt, even if you think it's small, or even if you think it's unimportant, or even if you think nobody knows about it, that is always a request for punishment, and the universe always responds. It's not like on your computer where you're about to like delete a file or something and a little dialog box comes up and says, are you sure you want to delete this? It's like the universe doesn't say, are you really sure that you want to order up this batch of punishment? It always
says.
I
didn't get that notification.
Exactly. We don't. All it says is kind of like the genie in the bottle, your wish is my command. And you think, darn, well, then I better find out really fast how I'm making these requests of the universe, and you'll notice how brilliantly and skillfully and amazingly they're showing up. You think, like, what's the likelihood that this assorted combination of events could occur? It's very amazing. And yet, I have to realize I'm going to pretend like I'm you, Mimi. It's like I, Mimi, am the ultimate source of the things that occur in my life. And if I'm going to assert that, which indeed I am, then you think, well, then I've got to find out something more about how this system works. How is it that I'm asking for what I don't want? Because the assertion is I'm somehow giving a signal to the universe, and here's the way we do it. This is
right, which brings up something really strong for me, because, you know, in and along this path of me trying to like get myself in better order, stepping out into my financial insecurities of what I need to be doing. I filed bankruptcy this year. I had to pay off the IRS, you know, good chunks of money that were really tough to come up with.
Yes.
And things that were really big steps for me. And then, you know, when I think I'm on the right path, I still yet have things to like draw my attention. And the thing that comes to mind, I mean, I will tell you, was I actually had a bullet come through my window just about 10 days ago. And it actually hit me physically. It did not harm me, but it touched my arm. It grazed me. And it went through a wall and into an exterior wall and into my bathroom. And like the whole thing was such a wake up. Like, I mean, it was in and of itself, it was enough. But it made me wonder, what am I not paying attention to? What am I not adhering to? What am I not listening to to the universe, or who's trying to knock at my
I was going to say, now that, if nothing else, the idea that a stray bullet is somehow going to come through your window right to where you are and literally slide right by your body. Did it actually touch you?
It did. It left a actually raised welt on my arm. It did not break, like it did not go into my body. It actually grazed across the top of my skin and went through the wall right millimeters off of my chest.
I would be asking some big questions too, because if one operates to the assumption, of which I absolutely do, that there are never any accidents about anything, and that our three-dimensional life, and that means the world that we presume is like the real world, I call it our time and space experience world, that to assert that everything in it we have orchestrated for our own either our own delight, our own learning, our own everything, but that we are somehow the orchestrators, and you think, how brilliant, how brilliant the way you have brought together not only a giant cake on your plate of all sorts of things, some of which we haven't even mentioned here, and we may or we may not, since it simply applies in every department of your life, but to have this as the frosting on the cake, boy, I would be saying, I need to look at absolutely everything in a way that I never have before.
It's very timely for sure. I don't know, what's happening out there that is so pressing or so poignant and concentrated at the moment, but it feels very like extreme in a way for me to pay attention. Because, it was a very close call. It was a hugely close call, and the issue is not looking at what's going on out there. It's looking at what's going inside your mind, because these are the effects of these things, of having to file bankruptcy, having bullets fly through your window, having other challenging relationship problems, and so on and so forth, it all has a common origin. And the common origin is somewhere in there. I can tell you, with beyond the shadow of a doubt, you are severely attacking yourself, or, listen to this, or someone else. Now, let's see exactly what I mean by that. And again, that just made my hairs on my arm raise.
Okay, well then we must be getting close to something important for you to hear. Okay, here is the first thing I'm going to say, and this is a great big long idea that I'm going to compress into about 2 minutes, which is we all carry wounding with us. And by that, I mean places where we feel guilty, we feel not okay, we feel ashamed, we feel unworthy, we feel like we don't measure up, blah, blah, blah. Some of that happens when we are conceived. This is now biological information that says we inherit the unfinished business of our ancestry as part of what we've got going on. Then, in our very early, prenatally and in our very earliest months on the earth, so to speak, when we do not have a developed brain and everything is getting downloaded into your unconscious mind without any filters, without any idea what's going on, without any idea how to compartmentalize, and so on and so forth. So you end up with this massive, and by massive, I mean we process 20 million units of information per second at an unconscious level. We process 40 units per second at a conscious mind level. Can you imagine the garbage dump that we're carrying around with us?
No wonder I'm so tired.
Well, exactly. It's a giant load. And then you get to be a little bit older, and let's say you're 2 years old and you have a temper tantrum because, after all, at 2, you don't yet have language, you don't have self-talk, you can't explain to anybody if you're emotionally hurt, if you're physically hurt, if you're scared to death, and so you yell. And then if you're in a situation where parents, and this would be most of us, up until this very new generation, doesn't understand about early childhood development, and so our responses are very inappropriate. They're not evil, but they don't add to the sense of safety and well-being of this young child, and so they'll go like, don't scream and yell like that or I'll send you to your room. In other words, you begin to learn, I've got to hold back and shut down or I'm not going to survive. You see, when we're very little, survival is job one. I'm instinctively trying to move away from what's painful or what seems like is dangerous and go toward what feels better. So we should end up with such a mess of beliefs and notions about ourselves that aren't true that it's just almost impossible to talk about them, but they're there. Or you get to be 3 years old, and let's say you trip over your own feet someplace, and if a caregiver says, "My God, you're such a clumsy kid, you fall over everything." In other words, you can imagine that day in and day out, between what we inherit, between our undeveloped brain, between inappropriate parenting and caregiving, which we all both have, and that's happened, you might say, to us and from us with our kids, you think, oh my gosh, it's amazing that I've survived so long. So there's not a one of us that gets to be 6 or 7 that does not have a deeply flawed picture of our worth and our ability and our deservingness. Are you with me?
Yeah, that's a heavy, that's a hard one for me sometimes too. Yeah.
Well, but you see, it's a very hard one for all of us to carry, because if you, I'm not deserving, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not as good as other people, or I can't do what other people can do, or nobody's here to support me. In other words, those are all beliefs that are wired in. You know, they're wired into our brain if we want to look at it from the neuroscience point of view. And they stay. It's like a computer program. If you install a program on your computer, it stays there until you remove it. It doesn't just one day disappear all on its own. Yeah, I mean, you have to change malfunctioning things in your computer. And
right.
Most of us wouldn't sit still for a non-functioning computer. If your phone stopped working or you couldn't contact people through your computer, you would not say, oh, darn, my computer's not working. You would do everything imaginable to see what is the matter and get it fixed. And we need
off for Apple.
and we need to recognize, and boy, I want you to hear this, there is not a thing the matter with you. You are absolutely the perfect being as you were created. Nothing has happened to you. You don't have to be fixed. You don't have to be improved. But some things that are programmed in do need to be looked at and traded in on a new model. How does that feel when you hear you're not the problem, but some things that you believe are?
Well, that's a relief for sure. I mean, it feels like, I'm all about trading up.
Yeah. Well, this is for sure where trading up needs to happen. This is where, so as this part, remember I said I was going to tell you 2 important parts. This is where introspection is really important, where you're looking not with a sense of blame, but doing some writing, doing some quiet time, doing whatever, where you go, what is it that I really what is the idea that I have running through my mind all the time? And it sounds like one of them is, I don't know how to do this thing right, whatever the thing is, whether it's your job, your finances, your living alone, whatever it might be, that you will discover that you're believing some things about yourself that are kind of fearful, and they're not very loving, and they're not very supportive. What do you think?
I would agree with that 100%.
Okay, so and you see, you thought, that's just what I privately in my own mind believe, and nobody needs to know about it, and it's just my private business, and so it's painful, but it kind of doesn't count. And this is where I need to stand up and jump up and down. I was a cheerleader in high school. This is where I want to go cheerleader mode, which is to say, oh, my dear, nothing could possibly be further from the truth, because those ideas that you never question, you don't look at, you don't go, is this true or not? We just let them slide through. Those are the very blueprint ideas that are creating your outer life. In other words, the things that are happening in your outer life, and in this case you have a particularly long list, are all an exact seamless outpicturing of some of these thoughts that you have not examined, you have not let go of, you have not upgraded, you have presumed that they weren't really beliefs, that they were the truth about yourself instead. And therefore, like, so what is there to look at? The truth is, I don't do this very well. And it's like, oh my gosh, that is so not the truth. It is a belief, and it can and must be changed. And I'm here to help do that. So what do you think about it?
And sometimes, upgrading can be difficult. Sometimes it's not always easy.
Of course.
Right now, my phone needs upgrading to the newest ISO system, and there are a lot of issues with that system, and a lot of people that have uploaded it and done it are regretting doing it. But, it takes time to learn sometimes those new upgrades, and it's about change, and change sometimes is hard. And
you are right. You are so right. So it's not like you go, oh, okay, all righty, well, I'll do this afternoon at 5:30 and then I'm done.
No, the work's not over. The work is not done. You got to relearn those things, and it's hard.
And the first hardest part is the kind of mind-boggling revelation that says, you mean I am really this amazingly powerful and creative, that the things that I'm thinking and energizing through my attention, through paying attention to them. Sometimes it's what you're paying attention to, like, I want this. Sometimes it's what you're paying attention to because you're resisting. Both of those are attention getting.
Right.
And they are showing up as every last detail in your life. So once you begin to realize, oh, my word, you mean I'm not the victim of anything that's going on? You mean somehow I am orchestrating what's going on? And people a lot of times start to scream and yell at this point and say, I am also for sure a victim of those people, those governments, those germs, those ideas, those whatever they are. And you think, you know what, let's stand back and look, why are you so in love with being a victim? There is a reason. But let's say we're much better off because if you insist I'm a victim and I can't do anything about this, then wow, you set yourself up for one big problem after the other. But if you decide to shift your idea about that and say, I have no idea how this works, but I feel like I would be better off if I'm really the one who's at the helm of deciding how my life is going to be, because clearly if I am, I can change it. If I'm a victim of everything and everybody else, then I'm just sunk. I might as well just go jump off the bridge right now. But if in fact I'm in charge, and if in fact all my past is now past history, and if in fact I can start to look and say, yes, indeed, I turn out to be my own worst enemy because I have been believing things and just assuming they were true, and also assuming it didn't really much matter if I believed them because nobody would know about it. And once you begin to get a different handle on that, then in the beginning it seems daunting and hard, but every single time you start to change your mind about yourself, you're rewiring your brain. And you contemplate, you look, let's say that there's a part of you that thinks, I don't do things very well. I'm just going to make up something. And if you sat routinely at some time every day and you thought, I am so skilled at so many things. I can do this, I can do this, I love to do this. I'm a smart person, and I know I've got help, and, whatever it is, it's like it's not meditating and it's not figuring out. It's contemplating a new way of looking at yourself. And I guess
it's empowering.
It's huge power.
Very empowering, yeah.
Absolutely empowering. And here's the other thing that I want to be sure to mention to you. Remember I said part of what we have to look at is all of our programming. And what A Course in Miracles is about, and it's not the only thing, it just happens to be very, very good. Part of what it does when you practice it and practice those lessons is that it will drive into your conscious mind awareness some of these big meta beliefs, you might say, these big overall beliefs, like somewhere in there, I just think I don't deserve a good life. And you go,
right.
Oh dear, I need to know about that so that I can begin to change that. So the purpose of practicing A Course in Miracles or other spiritual practices is to identify these deadening and punishing ideas that we hold about ourselves and change them. It's not to go, oh my God, look what I believe about myself. That's terrible. End of story. You go, this is so untrue. Watch me change my mind. And as you change your mind, the circumstances in your life are going to change, and they're going to be as out of the blue, better changes as an out of the blue bullet coming through your window. You won't know where they come.
I could use that.
Well, yes, and you deserve it, and you can have it. So here's the other thing that you must be aware of, and that is, here's my favorite example. I'm sure I will use this example over and over until the day I die because I think it makes so much sense, and that is, if you order something from Amazon, let's say you order a book and you say, ship to them, but send the bill to me. That works really well when you're ordering a book. However, if there's somebody in your life that you hate or that you don't like or that you resist or you think, well, this is what I think ought to happen to them because he or she is such a jerk. And it could be a person, it can be somebody you know, it can be a political figure, it can be a situation like your job or something like that. But where you really decide that something or someone else is guilty and basically ought to be punished, or you don't wish that situation or person well, you will get it, not them. In other words, unlike Amazon, where you can say, I order, ship to them, if I do the ordering, by having those thoughts in my mind, I'm the one who gets the order.
Yeah.
So it's truly, truly important to look and see, make yourself a little list. Who are the people I do not wish well? Who are the people that I don't include in I really want them to have a good life? Because if you want them to have a crummy life, you will get the order delivered of a crummy life delivered to you. And you think, how did this happen? And that's the other thing that we're so, as the human species, so to speak, unaware of. It's kind of like these are universal laws, and ignorance of them does not give us a pass. They're going to operate kind of like the strange guy coming in and jumping off the roof. It's like there's no process in laws that say, oh, I understand you don't understand about this one, so we'll let you float gently to the ground. It's like there's no provision for that. It's just that if you jump off the roof, you'll hurt yourself. If we wish ourselves or someone else ill, we will hurt ourselves. And we can't stop that law from happening. We could say, could you just go on vacation? Could I just turn this law off where I can just think anything I want to and nothing will happen? It's like, no. So the thing we could do is become aware of what the law is. Okay, so now I want to ask you a really important question. Tell me how you feel right now.
Well, I'm either wondering who I ordered it for, myself or someone else.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you're ordering it for you or someone else. You can clearly see you're receiving it.
I definitely am getting a very tall order that was prescribed for, and I guess I ordered it for myself because when I think about it, my intention, I don't really harbor issues for other people if I do, there's and nothing is minor, but I would have to say the bigger recipient of this is definitely for myself.
Yes.
And
tell me what that looks like. What does that sound like to you? What is the self-talk that you recognize is that you're hurting yourself? Where are you putting yourself down?
Well, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not capable enough. That deserving perhaps enough. Although that's a very conflict, because I do feel like I deserve good things, but yet I don't feel like I can give them necessarily to myself, I think is my belief. I think I have to have, somebody must give me the things that are worth something. They must give them to me. I can't give things of worth, whatever that is. I'm not even sure I can qualify that at this moment, but things of worth must come from an outside source. I'm clearly not capable of giving those things to myself. What those levels are, that would be a whole different conversation. But
you have just unearthed some of the most valuable things you'll ever hear yourself say out loud, because those 3 or 4 things, especially the last one where it says, basically I'm going to decode it and say it a slightly different way, I don't deserve to give myself anything of worth, because there's a part of me that actually believes I am both undeserving and worthless, in addition to being not capable and not good. And bless your beautiful heart, therein lies the core of why you have to be bankrupt and you don't earn a living and bullets come through the window. In other words, to declare to the universe on a moment-by-moment basis, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, I'm not good enough, and whatever else is on your list is a self-induced, imprisoning punishment. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. But can you see the heaviness that you have carried with you? In other words, it's not like it suddenly is becoming heavy. You might suddenly be becoming aware of it, but I think with all this stuff on your plate you're carrying around, you've already realized there's something very heavy. But the thing that's been missing, and you tell me if you can begin to connect the dots properly, is you haven't realized that all of those things that you believe in your so-called private life aren't private at all. They're showing up as the unfortunate ingredients in your life.
And you mean in a not private way?
They're right. They're not private, because everybody could see I don't have enough money and I'm struggling and bullets are through my window.
Right. And there's and there's shame in that, and embarrassment, and
yeah.
I would rather keep my dirt to myself in some ways, but it's a very hard thing. Like, I've had to speak, go outside of myself to speak, especially with the bullet situation. I mean, I've had to really make that. I couldn't. As much as I wanted to keep that to myself, I couldn't. It disturbed me physically and emotionally so much that I had to really, seek help for it.
Well, exactly, my dear. And you see, here's what I want you to hear, and this is absolutely critical to your well-being. This is not just a casual, well, maybe you can do this and maybe you don't have to if you don't feel like it. In other words, this must be done. This would be like saying, okay, let's see, my computer and my phone don't work. Let's see, maybe I'm going to dust them off. And then I hope that's going to work. It's like, well, let's not. They have to be reprogrammed. I mean, it's great to dust your phone and your computer, but that doesn't have anything to do with anything. What needs to happen is And this can be so powerful so fast when you realize, you see, you've already listed about half a dozen big, major things that on an almost moment-by-moment basis you believe about yourself that are so not true, about this being undeserving and incapable and not good and not worthy and everything else. Those are ideas that are wired into your brain. In other words, it's literally programming. Now, here's what I hope you will hear is good news. There's something called neuroplasticity, which just simply means the brain is easily rewired. And it doesn't matter at all how it's wired. In other words, the brain itself is not deciding, I think we'll wire you up as an unworthy person. It's like that's something that we have done to the brain, not the brain has done to us, so to speak. So it's very important that you get a real clear handle on, here are all the ways I am attacking myself on a moment-by-moment basis. I must stop. Okay, the business about not being deserving, we're just going to take them one at a time, where you sit with yourself and you realize, you know, the fact is, despite what my conscious mind, and we'll just call it your mind, has picked up over the years, the fact is, and this is the big capital letters fact, I was created brilliant and good and loving and light-filled and an eternal presence. In other words, you're so far more than just the body personality. That's just this tiny little costume you're wearing at the moment. And nothing has the power to change how I was created. We don't even have to get into what you think did it. You're just very clear that you were and are created because you exist and you're alive and you're conscious and you're aware. So that's not debatable, that you were created, but you were created brilliantly, capable and deserving. You were, listen to this with every cell in your body, you were adored into existence. And I don't mean into being the physical body part. I'm not talking about your parents on this earth. I'm talking about at that ultimate creation level, you were loved into existence. You are loved, you are held, you are supported, you're seen as the light that you are. So what you need to do is to spend some time, as much time as you possibly can on an ongoing basis, changing out the programming in your brain that says, I'm undeserving and not good, with absolutely I'm deserving. Practice sitting up in a chair, saying these things out loud, not as a sort of, I hope these are really true, but allowing a sense of the truth of this to well up in you. And then you begin to think this way, absolutely I'm deserving, and I'm going to, and whatever it is you need to do, that you see, if I could just reach in and grab out all that old programming and make it disappear out of your mind, I would do that in a heartbeat, because I know you do not deserve to live the life the way you're living it now. You deserve all the support and love and help and feeling cherished and embraced, and all of which is happening, but you can't experience it. You are blind to it because of this awful programming.
And I will say that, you know, one of the things that I've had that I'm learning, and I will say I'm learning because it's not easy for me, is, you know, in that support, in that giving from others to support me and to give me the courage and the acceptance of who I am, and telling me, just like what you're doing right now, telling me, you know, that I am deserving of this. It's a matter of also taking it in, and feeling it and holding it and accepting it. Accepting it. It's huge.
Yes.
That I can accept that and say, yes, I feel it. I'm internalizing it. I'm taking it in and holding it, because in my life, and I'm not committed to this, but I want to learn differently, is to accept those gifts. of
yes.
myself and from others, because
Yes.
in that tape, in that story that we give ourselves, that I've given myself, is that I must not deserve it because
Yes.
I push it away. I
Yes.
won't accept the gift. I won't accept the help. I won't accept the telling of what I deserve because I clearly don't feel it.
There
And
you go.
So
See, you're being absolutely brilliant. You're proving your own brilliance to you. And you see, all of this is so incredibly painful. And a whole nother story that we can't go into now is what to do with that pain. But for now, what I want you to do is, in every waking moment that you can think of it, to kind of walk around saying out loud so that you're activating not only the part of your brain that thinks, but also the part that speaks and hears, that it's like, you know what, I feel like I'm just waking up from some terrible dream. I absolutely am beloved and deserving. And I want you to not so much try to understand that, and not just do some sort of mindless affirmation like, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, I'm a good person. I want you to actually realize and let sink in, there's no way I could have made myself undeserving and worthless and unlovable, because I was created by whatever creates all of us as beloved and deserving and good. I need to treat myself the way I am cared about by everything that really counts. And so recognizing how much you have pushed away help, which is all because of guilt, all because of I don't think I deserve it, all of that needs to be looked at, not with condemnation, not with anything other than the most loving and accepting. And it's like, my goodness, I believed a bunch of stuff that's not true. I'm going to sit here and think about an entirely new way of regarding myself. And just knowing that you can do that, I can tell you're a smart girl. So what does it feel like to think, you mean I don't have to carry this burden of feeling like I've ruined myself and now I'm just this dumb little worthless person? I don't have to be that for another second. I can take myself by my own hand. I can be my own best cheerleader, speaking of cheerleaders, and I can start to contemplate all of these beautiful, true things about me. And you have the power, the ability, and the universe leans to support you every second of the way. Now tell me how you feel at hearing that. Just however you feel. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a great opening, and it gives me opportunities clearly that I have not taken advantage of.
Marvelous.
I do think that for me personally, for who I am, there is some fear in that.
Of course.
But I think that, knowing that I am able and that I was made to be able to do that.
Yes.
Inherently somehow.
Yes.
Is very hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason that I want you to now just notice, see if you notice that there is a little bit of difference, even if it's slight, if there's a little bit of difference between how you felt when you first, when we first started to talk, and how you feel now. Is there any difference at all?
Well, absolutely. I mean, anytime that I'm able to kind of get a better projection on understanding my just the places of my life is always it gives a more lightness to my being. I just feel more hopeful instead of just feeling a darkness over, like a cloud or something like hanging over me. It feels more like there's control, somewhat control in it, and mindfulness, that I can be mindful in the choices that I make to make it different. And
perfect.
That is that's very helpful, but also hopeful.
Well, and here's the reason why I ask you that. Naturally, I want to know the answer, but I also want you to hear that just at that emotional feeling level, you feel a little more up, a little more hopeful, a little lighter than you did an hour ago. Okay, that is because you have just now successfully started to rewire your brain, because the way we feel is a function of the thoughts that we're telling our brain, and it just responds by creating our emotions and our feelings. So the fact that you feel differently now than you did an hour ago is proof positive of how quickly and how effectively you change your mind, how quickly your brain is rewired, how much, if you keep on this track of thinking very differently about yourself, how everything can shift that fast. Don't you think that's fascinating?
That is incredibly fascinating. That we are remarkable.
Yes, we are so much more remarkable than you can imagine. So Anyway, I have loved talking to you, and our time has come to an end. I hope you found it helpful.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and I'll look forward to hearing from you about what happens next.
Thank you, Carol.
All right, bye.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I had given Mimi a script of what I would like for her to say, I could not have done it better. She was so clear and articulate about how undeserving she has felt. All those ways she's refused help and support and has been driven by all sorts of totally false but unexamined and unchallenged notions about herself and about how life generally works. It's so startling to hear that our private lives are not all that private after all, and that what we believe about ourselves and thus unknowingly are asking for is always granted. Oh no. As with our other interviewees, all of whom happily have written about their successes and seeing things differently, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing from Mimi about how things are shifting for her. So, if you would like to do a little excavating into what makes you tick, please send in your challenge to findingpeace@carolhowe.com, and we'll consider it for a session. Thank you so much. Remember how helpful gratitude is in our healing, and we sure look forward to meeting again next week. Goodbye, and have a great week.